Joining us now, Pod Save America co-host, former senior advisor to President Obama, and author of Why We Still Can, Dan Pfeiffer. Dan, it's really good to have you.
Great to be here.
There was one moment last night that knocked me off my chair, actually knocked me off my chair. And it was, I think you know what it was. It was when Obama made the crowd size illusion and had the hand movement. For me, I couldn't fathom that he would do something like that until now. And I think it shows us that the Democrats are now willing to play a little rougher with the Republicans.
Well, I am not going to try to interpret his hand motions. I'll leave that to you and your audience. But I will say that the way President Obama has always dealt with someone like Trump is not to fearmonger about his strengths, but to use humor to reveal Trump to be the clown that he is, right? It's to make people understand how small Trump is. And that was sort of the gist of the speech last night, right? How he talked about Trump as the neighbor who never turns off his leaf blower. And so, that's how Obama has approached Trump since the very beginning. And I think we saw that last night. I'll leave the hand gesture interpretation to anyone else.
Okay, I think it was pretty clear, but I'll leave it there. But this is different from what you say. Obama's always been able to do this. But the Democrats haven't been doing this for the past 8 years. They have been making Donald Trump to seem like a powerful villain who is, so in control of the Republican Party and so dangerous that they're making him bigger, as you said. And that has, been led by President Biden, who did a version of that at the convention on Monday night as well. And the Democratic Party seemed to be falling in line behind that. Why this change now? Is it because Kamala Harris is at the top of the ticket? She has a lot of the same advisors as President Biden did.
That's how Kamala Harris has addressed Trump as well. I think back to the moment after he questioned her racial identity, and there's so many ways she could have responded to that. But at her first event after that, she smiled, she had a slight little laugh, and she kind of said, that's more of the same old stuff, right? We don't have to play Trump's game, right? We don't have to take the bait. We can reveal him to be small. And that is exactly what Obama did. And that's been the gist of her campaign this far as well.
What can you tell us about the relationship that the Obamas have with Kamala Harris and what sort of role they'll be playing for the rest of this campaign?
They have been friends for 20 years. The president and Vice President Harris met at a fundraiser when he was running for Senate, long before he was a famous person, before anyone thought he might be president. And in the 2008 campaign, we didn't have, it kind of seems hard to imagine now, but we didn't have a lot of public endorsers or politicians. And Kamala Harris, who was then the district attorney in San Francisco, endorsed Obama. She was one of our hardest working surrogates, our most loyal supporters. She would even go to Iowa and knock doors in sub-zero temperatures. Everyone on that campaign was always so grateful for how hard she worked for President Obama. And she really that was a risky thing to do when he was such a long shot. And so that's a deep and close relationship.
Again, John Legend is doing his sound check behind you, which is why it's getting kind of loud. The guy, there he is. He's right there. He's going to be doing Prince tonight in honor of Minnesota and Tim Walz. I want to play another bite from Michelle Obama. This one, I think, is a very sticky bite that has lived in a lot of people's memories since last night. Let's listen.
She understands that most of us will never be afforded the grace of failing forward. We will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. No.
Dan, so well received in the room. Who else gets that message? Who else is convinced by that sort of rhetoric?
I mean, I think Michelle Obama is probably the person at this convention with the best ability to persuade the most voters, because everyone knows that she hates politics. She's not a politician. And she talks to you like, as my wife who worked for her for a long time used to say, that friend you have who will never BS you. Always tell it to you like it is. And the way she did that last night, and there is such a kindred spirit, I think, between her and President Obama and Vice President Harris, because they understand what she is going through. They have been through the ringer in this way. They understand the scrutiny that she is under, the fact that, unlike Trump, she will not be given multiple opportunities, that if she makes one mistake, how people will pounce on her. And I think the way she did that last night was very powerful. It was setting the stage for the campaign to come, but it also, like President Obama, was taking on Donald Trump, but in a way that makes him small, that takes him down, in the sort of way that will make Donald Trump freak out and be literally saying, because that's not what he wants. He wants you to take his bait and to fearmonger about him. So that speech was electric. It's one of the best speeches I've ever heard at all the conventions I've been to.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest living order, Barack Obama, except for one, his wife, Michelle.
Exactly,
Dan Pfeiffer, thank you so much. Good to have you.